The dragon sat alone on the cliff, high above the valley below. His scales were streaked with silver and dark green, showing the passage of many years. Once he had been feared across worlds, his name whispered in awe and respect. Armies had stopped, fleets had retreated, and entire cities had held their breath when he appeared. But now all that seemed far away, like smoke lost in the wind. The valley beneath him had changed. Cities had risen with shining towers and humming energy grids. Roads and bridges crossed the land where battles had once raged. Ships flew through the skies, leaving trails of light across the horizon. Dragons still existed, but few came near his cliff. Most had gone to distant lands following their own purpose. The dragon, named Kael'thar by those who remembered him, had retreated into silence. He no longer sought conflict or recognition. Each day he spread his wings and felt the wind, letting it carry him just above the cliffs but never far. He watched the humans below, curious yet distant. Some tried to honor him, leaving offerings of fruit or shining metals. Some ignored him completely, focused on their expanding cities. Kael'thar wondered if the world had moved on without needing him anymore. The thought weighed heavily on his heart. Memories of old battles haunted him. He remembered the sky alight with fire, his roar shaking the heavens, the fear and respect in the eyes of those who opposed him. Once he had believed strength was his purpose, and power was his responsibility. Now he questioned it. Had all those battles truly mattered? Had his strength changed anything, or had it simply faded with time? Kael'thar lowered his head to rest on the rocky cliff. A gust of wind swept past him, rustling the jagged stones. The sun shone bright, but it could not warm the loneliness he carried. He had tried to speak to younger dragons, but they either feared him or ignored him. Humans rarely came near, and when they did, it was out of curiosity, not respect. He had been left behind, a relic of a world that no longer needed him. Yet Kael'thar did not feel entirely useless. He still remembered the lessons of his long life. Strategy, patience, protection, and caution, they all lived in him. But without purpose, knowledge became a burden. Without someone to guide, strength became empty. The wind whistled through the cliffs, carrying a hollow sound as if echoing his doubts. One evening, as the suns dipped low, casting long shadows across the valley, Kael'thar stretched his wings and watched the sky. Ships passed far below, moving in neat lines, unafraid. Children played in the distant city parks, unaware that a legend sat silently above them. The dragon thought of the generations he had protected once, the lives he had saved, the victories he had won. Were those memories enough to fill a life now? Could pride alone sustain a being who once roared across the stars? Kael'thar roared softly into the twilight, but the sound returned to him only as an echo against empty stone. No flares of fear came from below, no armies bent to his will. Only silence. It was a quiet that had grown familiar, but tonight it felt heavier. He folded his wings and lowered his head, staring at the horizon. Perhaps he was no longer needed. Perhaps his time had ended. Suddenly movement caught his eye. A small human figure climbed the cliffs from the valley below, careful but determined. Kael'thar watched silently, not alarmed but cautious. Humans sometimes came to offer tribute and sometimes to spy. But this one moved differently. He did not carry weapons. He did not make loud calls or gestures. His approach was quiet, respectful, and steady. The dragon observed the human carefully. Each step was deliberate, showing neither fear nor aggression. Kael'thar shifted slightly, testing the wind. The figure did not pause. He climbed higher, closer to the edge of Kael'thar's resting place. The dragon's golden eye narrowed, trying to measure intent. It had been a long time since anyone dared approach him alone. Many had assumed he would attack first and ask questions later. The human finally stopped a few meters away, bowing slightly in a gesture of respect. Kael'thar blinked slowly. The gesture was simple, almost humble, yet it carried a weight of understanding. The human did not speak, but Kael'thar sensed something in him. Curiosity, yes, but also care. Something rare and unfamiliar, an acknowledgement that the dragon still had value. For the first time in many years, Kael'thar felt something stir inside him. Not pride, not anger, not the thrill of battle, but a faint spark of purpose. Perhaps the world had not entirely forgotten him. Perhaps there were still those who saw what he could offer, even if it was not in war. The human took a small step forward, hands open, signaling no threat. Kael'thar shifted again, allowing himself to be seen more fully. His wings stretched slightly, not in aggression but in presence. The air between them was heavy with tension and anticipation. Both waited. One for trust, the other for acceptance. The suns dipped fully below the horizon, casting the cliff in soft purple light. The valley below glimmered with human activity, alive and thriving. The dragon and the human remained still, watching each other, feeling the quiet pulse of life. In that silence, Kael'thar realized something he had long forgotten. Even the strongest and oldest being could still be needed, still be relevant, still make a difference. For the first time in many years he did not feel entirely alone. The world had changed, yes, but perhaps he had a place in it yet. And as the stars began to shine above, Kael'thar lifted his head, golden eyes fixed on the human before him, waiting for the moment when purpose might return. It was a beginning. The old dragon, who had believed the world had moved on, had yet to discover that kindness and respect could reach even the most distant heart. And somewhere deep within, a small hope flickered, one that would change everything. The human paused at the edge of the cliff, breathing slowly, careful not to startle the massive dragon. His name was Kaelin, a young explorer from the city below. He had heard the stories of the ancient dragon, Kael'thar, who had once shaped the fate of worlds with his strength. Most humans avoided the cliffs entirely, believing the dragon untouchable, impossible to approach. But Kaelin did not come with fear. He did not come with weapons. He came with only one thought: perhaps the dragon had not truly been forgotten. Kael'thar's golden eyes followed the human as he stepped closer. He did not move, only observed. The dragon's wings were folded neatly against his body, but the sheer size of him was enough to make even the bravest soldiers hesitate. Kaelin's movements were careful, respectful, and calm. He knew that even a small mistake could send the dragon into a defensive stance. Yet he did not falter. The wind brushed against them both, and the sounds of the distant city reached their ears. Children laughed, ships hummed overhead, and lights flickered in the growing twilight. Kael'thar tilted his head, listening. Humans rarely came here alone, and even fewer approached with no intent to harm. Kaelin sensed the dragon's suspicion, but he did not step back. He took another slow step forward, speaking softly. "I know you've seen many things," Kaelin said, his voice low, carrying across the stone. "I know you've fought and protected. I don't come to challenge you or ask for battle. I come to learn, if you will let me." The dragon blinked slowly, a movement that seemed almost deliberate. He had not heard such words in many years. Most humans came with demands or threats. Few spoke of respect, fewer still of learning. Kaelin's approach was different. It stirred something old and forgotten within Kael'thar, a memory of being more than a weapon, more than a force of power. Kaelin continued, taking another careful step. He placed one hand over his chest, a gesture of honesty and humility. "I want to understand you," he said. "Not as a creature to fear. Not as a legend to worship. As someone who matters. You still matter, even if the world seems to have moved on." The dragon's gaze softened slightly, though his massive body remained still. Kaelin could feel the weight of those eyes on him, measuring, testing, and yet curious. Kaelin did not flinch. He did not try to hide the tremble in his hands. He simply waited, giving Kael'thar space to decide. Several humans from the city watched from below. They had followed Kaelin, curious about his choice to climb the cliffs alone. Some whispered in disbelief. "He's going to get himself killed," one said. "That dragon hasn't forgotten his power," another muttered. But Kaelin did not hear them. He was focused entirely on the dragon before him, on the possibility of connection. Kael'thar shifted slightly, lowering his massive head a little. The motion was careful, deliberate, as though acknowledging Kaelin's presence without signaling aggression. The dragon's scales glittered in the fading sunlight, showing streaks of silver and green, signs of his age and experience. His wings stretched briefly, a silent reminder of his strength. Kaelin saw it, but he did not move backward. Instead, he knelt on one knee, placing his hand lightly on the stone in front of him. He did not reach for the dragon. He did not demand attention. He simply made himself smaller, showing that he came in peace. "I am not here to take anything from you," Kaelin said softly. "I only want to be here if you will allow me. You've given so much to the world. You've protected it when no one else could. I want to help you remember that you still matter." For a long moment, the wind was the only sound. Kael'thar's eyes, golden and ancient, scanned Kaelin's face. He felt something he had not felt in centuries, a quiet respect, free of fear or obligation. The human did not bow to demand favor. He did not threaten or plead. He only waited, honest and patient. Finally, Kael'thar lowered his massive head closer to the stone. He did not touch Kaelin, but he allowed himself to be observed, to be approached. It was a small gesture, but it carried weight far greater than any roar or display of power. Kaelin smiled faintly, relieved but still cautious. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a small device designed to measure environmental energy, a tool he carried to study dragons without harm. He placed it gently on the stone between them, not touching the dragon. "I want to understand your world," he said. "I want to see through your eyes even a little. If you let me." The dragon's eye narrowed slightly, studying the device, then Kalen. He did not move away. He did not attack. He simply watched, letting the human take the first steps toward trust. Kalen understood the importance of patience. He did not speak again, only stayed still, allowing the dragon to decide if this small presence was acceptable. Hours seemed to pass in silence. The sun set, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples. The city below shimmered with lights, but Kalen's attention never wavered. Finally, Kael'thar gave a low, rumbling sound, not a roar, not a warning, but a small acknowledgement. It was faint, almost like a sigh, yet it carried meaning. Kalen stood slowly, keeping his movements calm. "I will stay here," he said, "as long as you allow it. You are not forgotten. You are still needed." The dragon lifted his head slightly higher, looking past Kalen at the distant city. Perhaps he saw the world changing, perhaps he remembered the lives he had protected. Kalen did not press further. He only stayed, a silent presence, showing that even the oldest dragon could be seen and respected. That night, Kael'thar did not leave his cliff. He did not attack. He remained, watching, breathing, and feeling a small spark he had not felt in years. Kalen settled nearby, careful to respect space, ready to continue this quiet, careful conversation. For the first time in a long while, Kael'thar felt the beginnings of something new, the realization that he might still be needed, that his age and wisdom were not forgotten. And the human who stepped forward, patient and kind, became the first bridge back to the world that had moved on without him. Kael'thar sat on the cliff as dawn broke, painting the sky with streaks of gold and pink. He had not moved much since the human, Kalen, had first stepped onto the rocky ledge. The dragon's mind felt heavy with memories, but there was something new, something fragile, lingering in the air, a sense of possibility. The young human had not fled or attacked, and that alone had unsettled him. Kalen sat a short distance away, his legs crossed, eyes fixed on the dragon. He carried no weapons, only a small pack with tools to study the dragon without causing harm. His presence was calm, patient, and unthreatening. Slowly he spoke again, not with orders but with curiosity. "I know the world has changed," Kalen said softly. "The cities, the ships, the people, they all move forward. But there are still things only you can see. There are dangers and there are lives that could be saved if you choose to help." Kael'thar's golden eyes studied him. He had spent years believing that his strength was no longer needed. Humans had grown, dragons had scattered, and conflicts had moved elsewhere. But something in Kalen's voice stirred a memory of purpose, of being a protector rather than a weapon. "Why would you think I can help?" Kael'thar's voice rumbled deep, echoing across the cliffs. It was quiet, not a roar, but heavy with centuries of experience and doubt. "Because you have knowledge and wisdom that no one else does," Kalen replied without hesitation. "You've seen the world before it became what it is now. You know things we can't even imagine. That matters. You still matter." The dragon's wings twitched slightly, the motion betraying a spark of interest. For centuries, Kael'thar had equated strength with fear. If humans did not tremble before him, if dragons did not bow, he thought his purpose had ended. But here was one human, unafraid, speaking not of fear but of value. Kalen slowly stood and walked a short distance closer, careful to move with respect. "I want to show you," he said. "There are areas of the world where your guidance could make a difference. There are lands at risk, skies that need a watchful eye, and new generations who could learn from you. You are not irrelevant. You are needed." Kael'thar lowered his massive head, letting his eye follow Kalen's movements. He did not step back. He did not roar. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of interest in the world outside his solitude. "What makes you think humans care about what I have to offer?" Kael'thar asked. Kalen smiled faintly. "We care about those who protect and guide. We may not always show it and we may make mistakes along the way, but we see the value of someone who knows the cost of strength and the responsibility it brings. That is why I came here, not to command but to remind you that you are still needed." The dragon thought about the countless years he had spent fighting, teaching, and protecting. He thought about the humans he had saved, the lands he had defended, and the dragons he had led. Had all of it truly faded into nothing? Kalen's words suggested otherwise. Perhaps it had not. Perhaps he could still make a difference. Kalen reached into his pack and pulled out a small hollow device. He projected a soft map of the nearby lands, showing areas where environmental hazards threatened both humans and wildlife. The dragon's eye followed the images carefully. He recognized places he had flown over long ago, places where he had left his mark. These areas are at risk, Kalen explained. With your guidance we can prevent disasters. You have knowledge no one else does. You know the winds, the storms, and the lands better than anyone alive today. Kael'thar studied the map in silence. He had spent centuries observing these lands, guarding them in his own way. Yet he had believed it no longer mattered. Now, with Kalen's words and gestures, he saw a chance to make a difference once more. You speak of helping, Kael'thar said at last. Not fighting. Not showing strength. Only guidance. Yes, Kalen said. Not every battle is fought with fire. Not every war is won with wings. Sometimes it is knowledge, patience, and presence that matter most. You have all of that. That is why you are still needed. Kael'thar lowered his head closer to the stone, as if considering the human's words carefully. The sun rose higher, casting light across his ancient scales. For the first time in years he felt the stirrings of purpose, quiet but persistent. Kalen knelt again, placing a hand gently on the stone near the dragon. You don't have to decide now, he said. I only ask that you see that your strength and wisdom still matter. That you can make a difference in ways you may not have imagined. The dragon's eye softened, reflecting the rising sun. It was not agreement but contemplation. He could feel the truth in Kalen's words. Perhaps the world had not moved on entirely. Perhaps there was still a place for him, not as a weapon but as a guide, a protector, a teacher. For hours they sat together on the cliff. Kalen spoke quietly about the humans, the cities, and the challenges that faced the lands below. Kael'thar listened, occasionally shifting his massive body but never turning away. With each passing moment, the dragon began to see that his knowledge, his experience, and his presence could still change outcomes. As night fell, stars appearing one by one in the deep sky, Kael'thar lowered his head fully, not in submission but in quiet reflection. The weight of centuries pressed on him, but with it came clarity. He could act. He could guide. He could be part of the world again. Kalen stood a few steps back, smiling softly. You are not alone, he said. And you are not forgotten. You are needed, Kael'thar. The world still needs you. The dragon lifted his head, golden eyes meeting Kalen's. For the first time in many years, a spark of hope ignited within him. A faint but real sense of purpose returned, fragile and new, yet powerful enough to stir the ancient dragon's heart. Kael'thar realized then that he had not been forgotten. He had only been waiting for someone to show him that even the oldest, strongest dragons could still have value. And that someone was a human who had chosen patience, respect, and kindness over fear. For the first time in centuries, Kael'thar felt the possibility of a future where he mattered once more. A future where he could rediscover his value. The morning air was crisp, and the valley below shimmered with sunlight reflecting off glass and metal towers. Kael'thar had remained on his cliff for many days, watching, thinking, and slowly rediscovering the purpose Kalen had reminded him of. But Kalen knew that words alone would not solidify the dragon's return to the world. He needed a moment where Kael'thar could act, where he could show that trust and guidance were more than abstract ideas. They were real and necessary. Today we'll see, Kalen said quietly, glancing at the dragon. His voice was calm, encouraging without command. Kael'thar simply tilted his head, golden eyes fixed on the young human. Kalen had been patient, careful to show that he did not seek dominance or control. That patience had begun to break through the dragon's doubt. Down in the valley, a signal from a nearby city reached Kalen's communicator. A storm of unusual energy had begun to affect the river that supplied water to several settlements. If it worsened, floods could endanger both humans and wildlife. Kalen looked at the readings, then back at Kael'thar. This is your chance, he said softly. You can help or you can turn away. I believe you'll act. Kael'thar studied the river from the cliff. The currents below shimmered with strange lights, evidence of the energy storm's interference. He had flown over similar waters long ago, protecting rivers and lands with his strength and understanding. But now, after years of isolation, doubt crept in. Could he still make a difference? Could his presence still matter? Kalen took a careful step forward. I won't force you, he said. I only ask that you see what's happening. You have knowledge the humans cannot match. You can guide us, show us the way even from above. You can prevent disaster. The dragon's wings flexed, muscles tightening beneath thick scales. He did not move immediately, but he lowered his massive head to observe the currents more closely. The storm's glow pulsed along the river, casting strange reflections against the cliffs. Kael'thar felt the energy ripple beneath him. He had learned to read the signs of danger, and now those instincts returned with clarity. "Will you come?" Kaelin asked quietly, stepping back to give space. "Or will you watch and do nothing?" Kael'thar inhaled slowly, lifting his massive wings. The wind lifted along the cliff, brushing past Kaelin but never threatening him. Then, with careful control, the dragon pushed off the stone ledge and soared into the sky, powerful and silent. His movement alone sent ripples through the valley, and humans below paused to watch, unsure what he intended. The dragon glided toward the river, eyes scanning the currents. Energy swirled in chaotic patterns, but Kael'thar recognized the signs: imbalance, danger, and the possibility of harm to those who relied on the river. He adjusted his flight, circling above the storm, testing the energy's flow with the precision of experience. Kaelin followed on foot along the cliffside path, keeping pace without interfering, allowing the dragon to lead. Kael'thar's massive shadow fell over the river. He dipped lower, wings adjusting to create controlled gusts that helped redirect the turbulent energy. His movements were deliberate, precise, showing both strength and intelligence. The water began to calm under his influence, currents slowing and flowing more evenly. The glow dimmed and the threat of flooding lessened. Kaelin watched, heart pounding. "You're doing it," he whispered. "You're showing them you're needed." The dragon let out a low, rumbling sound, almost like approval. He did not roar, he did not threaten, but the valley seemed to breathe easier with his presence. Humans in the city below noticed the current stabilizing. Engineers and scientists who had been monitoring the river began to coordinate relief efforts, guided by the changes in the water. Kael'thar's influence gave them the time and space they needed to act safely. After several minutes, the storm's energy dissipated completely, leaving the river calm and steady. Kael'thar circled once, then rose higher into the sky. He glanced down at Kaelin, whose eyes were bright with relief and pride. The dragon's wings flexed in a subtle acknowledgement, an unspoken bond forming between them. Kaelin stepped forward slightly. "You see," he said softly, "you're still needed. Your presence matters more than you realize." Kael'thar's gaze lingered on the human. For the first time in centuries, he felt a quiet satisfaction that was not tied to fear or power. It was a new kind of strength, one rooted in guidance, protection, and purpose rather than dominance. As the sun climbed higher, Kael'thar landed near the cliff's edge. He folded his wings slowly, resting but alert. Kaelin approached, careful not to crowd him. "You passed the test," he said. "Not because I told you to, but because you chose to act. That is trust, Kael'thar. That is the beginning of what comes next." The dragon lowered his head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. He did not bow, he did not kneel, but the motion carried meaning. He had chosen to act when it mattered, to step out of isolation, and to show that his strength could be used for more than memory or legend. Kaelin smiled, understanding the subtlety. "The world has changed," he said. "And so have you. You don't have to fight old battles to prove your worth. You only need to use your knowledge and presence where it matters." Kael'thar exhaled, a low rumble that vibrated through the rocks. The air around him seemed lighter, less heavy with the doubt that had burdened him for so long. He had tested his trust in the human, and the world had responded. The river was calm, the energy storm dissipated, and the humans below were safe. That evening, as stars appeared over the valley, Kael'thar returned to the cliff, allowing Kaelin to sit near him once more. The dragon no longer felt the crushing weight of irrelevance. He had acted, he had guided, and he had seen the result. For the first time in a long while, he felt connected, not just to one human but to the world that still needed him. Kaelin placed a hand on the stone between them. "You see, Kael'thar," he said softly, "strength isn't only about fighting. Sometimes it's about choosing the right moment to act. Sometimes it's about trust." The dragon lowered his head slightly, eyes glowing faintly in the starlight. "Trust, purpose, value." For the first time in centuries, he understood that he had not been abandoned by the world. He had only needed someone to show him the way back. And with that understanding, Kael'thar felt a quiet fire stir within, a fire not of anger, not of fear, but of purpose renewed. The test of trust was passed, and a new chapter of his life had begun. The valley lay calm beneath the first light of dawn. Kael'thar rested on the cliff, wings folded, golden eyes scanning the horizon. The events of the past days had shifted something deep inside him. No longer did he feel the weight of irrelevance pressing on his massive shoulders. The human, Kaelin, had shown him that the world still had need of his knowledge, his wisdom, and his presence. For the first time in centuries, Kael'thar felt purpose stir again. Kalen approached quietly, carrying a small pack with supplies and instruments. "Good morning," he said softly. "The cities are asking for guidance again. There are areas where your knowledge could help avoid disaster before it even begins." Kael'thar shifted slightly, lifting his head. He had seen disasters before, natural and unnatural, that humans and dragons alike could not prevent without careful observation. He could feel the energy in the land, in the rivers, in the skies. Patterns of imbalance had always been easy for him to read. Now he understood that he could use those skills to help, rather than merely stand as a relic of the past. Kalen gestured toward the river valley below, where new settlements had grown. "There are stretches where erosion threatens bridges, where storms could overwhelm fields. We've tried to manage it, but your insight would make a difference. You can teach us where to act, how to observe, and what to protect." The dragon exhaled slowly, a deep rumble that vibrated through the stones of the cliff. It was a sound of acceptance, quiet and deliberate. He rose to his feet, wings stretching wide, catching the morning light. The movement was majestic but not threatening. It was a promise, a signal that he would act, that he had chosen to reclaim his purpose. Kalen smiled. "We'll work together," he said. "I'll listen. I'll record. I'll follow your lead. The world needs your eyes, Kael'thar. And now you have a choice, to protect again, not for fear, not for war, but for life." Kael'thar nodded, though the motion was subtle. He lowered his head and looked out over the valley, seeing the rivers, the forests, the growing cities, and the humans moving below. Each part of the land held lessons, risks, and opportunities. For centuries, he had flown above these places, unseen and unheeded, or feared when he appeared. Now he could guide without imposing, teach without dominating, and act without aggression. Together, the dragon and the human descended toward the valley. Kael'thar's wings cut through the air with silent strength. The humans below paused, staring up at the massive creature, unsure of what to expect. Some held fear, others awe, but Kalen called softly to them. "He is not here to harm. He is here to guide." The dragon circled low, observing patterns in the rivers, the forests, and the human settlements. His sharp eyes detected erosion, unstable soil, and areas where storms could cause flooding. Kalen followed, recording the dragon's signals and explanations. For the first time, humans were learning to understand Kael'thar not as a weapon or a legend, but as a guide and protector. As the days passed, Kael'thar became a teacher. He showed engineers how to observe the land, how to predict dangers, and how to strengthen communities against natural threats. Farmers learned from his instincts, adjusting crops and irrigation based on his subtle signals. Children watched from safe distances, amazed at the dragon who could read the land like a living map. Kalen remained by his side, a bridge between dragon and human. He spoke gently to Kael'thar, translating gestures, explaining intentions, and providing reassurance. "You are making a difference," he said one morning as they surveyed a river bend prone to flooding. "Even without fire, even without fear, you are still needed." Kael'thar's response was a low, vibrating rumble. Not prideful, not boastful, but content. He understood now that strength was not measured only by battle or dominance. Strength was measured by presence, guidance, and the choice to act wisely when needed. He had reclaimed that strength not for war but for life. Communities began to adapt to his guidance. Bridges were reinforced, fields prepared for storms, and emergency plans organized with his insight. Other dragons, seeing Kael'thar's cooperation with humans, began to approach cautiously, curious about this new path. Some stayed in the distance, observing, while others allowed themselves to be guided as well. One evening, Kael'thar returned to the cliff with Kalen. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the valley. The dragon stretched his wings wide and exhaled, feeling the wind lift him slightly, carrying him gently above the cliffs. Kalen stood nearby, silent and respectful, watching the dragon settle once more. "You've changed the way the world sees you," Kalen said softly. "And you've changed yourself too. You are not just a dragon of old battles. You are a protector, a teacher, a force for life. That is your purpose now." Kael'thar's golden eyes reflected the fading sunlight. He lowered his head in acknowledgement. He did not need to speak. The understanding was mutual. The dragon, who had once thought the world had moved on, now knew he was still needed. His strength, his wisdom, and his presence mattered more than ever. From that moment on, Kael'thar moved through the valley and beyond, not as a legend feared, but as a guardian respected. Humans learned from him, dragons watched and sometimes joined, and the lands he had long protected flourished. Storms were mitigated, rivers flowed safely, and communities thrived under his quiet guidance. Kalen walked beside him often, recording observations, translating gestures, and offering encouragement. Together they became a symbol, humans and dragons working together not through force or fear, but through trust, understanding, and mutual respect. Kael'thar no longer saw himself as a relic of the past. He was a living bridge between generations, species, and worlds. Age had not diminished his value, it had refined it. Strength was not measured by the power to destroy, but by the wisdom to protect and the courage to act when it mattered most. As stars filled the night sky, Kael'thar stretched his wings and let out a low, contented rumble. The wind carried the sound across the valley, not as a roar of warning but as a quiet statement. He was here. He mattered. And the world, with all its complexity and change, was better for it. The old dragon, who had once believed he was forgotten, had reclaimed his purpose. And in doing so he taught all who watched, human and dragon alike, that true strength is measured not by fear, but by the choice to act with wisdom, kindness, and care. The world had not moved on. He had returned and everything had changed.